With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halvorson.
Good morning. I am Sabrina Halvorson here with Lorrie Boyer. Good morning, Lorrie.
Good morning.
We are going to chat starting out the day today talking about organics, and the Organic Trade Association recently did this survey and found that Millennials and Gen Z are really enjoying organics. In fact, it says that they're putting high value on organics health benefits. So this study or this survey shows that younger consumers are buying more organics than previous generations have. So the marketing for the organic industry is really working on our younger consumers, the people who are now the young parents and starting families and things. They are turning more to organic food than conventional.
I thought that it might be good just to read the definition of organic,
Yeah.
because I think there's a lot of confusion on what actual organic is. And according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, there's a few different ones here, obviously, but the main one is relating to yield or involving the use of food produced with the use of feed or fertilizer of plant or animal origin without employment of chemically formulated fertilizers, growth stimulants, antibiotics, or pesticides. That is the official definition. So I often say like chemical free when I'm talking about it. And that there's confusion on labeling, there's confusion on the definition. And then a lot of people will ask me, is it worth paying the higher price for organics? To me, that's a personal decision. It's not really something, as someone who reports on it, that I should tell you what to do or not do. But to your point, I really see the younger people really engaging and really picking up organic fruits and vegetables. My son being one of them. I had him guest host on the show here while you were at the World Ag Expo, excuse me. And then you and I even talked about it here when we were talking about alcohol-free wine. Is a lot of the reason that they're choosing that is because of health reasons, and they're really aware of what they're putting into their bodies.
This is true. And I like that you gave us the official dictionary description or definition of organic. And you pointed out something that's really important, because a lot of consumers, the organic label has a halo effect where it's easy to assume that everything about this product is good because it says organic on it. And I'm not bashing organics. So, don't misunderstand me, dear listener. But it's important to know that there are still products used on organics. It's just that those products have to come from some type of a natural source. But keep in mind, here's something that I point out, and it's a little bit extreme. So forgive me for just a slight moment of sensationalism, but asbestos is organic because it is a naturally occurring substance. You wouldn't spray it on your food and then eat it, right? So it's not to say that everything that's organic is actually good for you. But keep in mind, that's the difference with your organic produce, is that one of the things is that it cannot have the types of chemicals that are man-made. It has to be chemical products or that are derived from nature. So products are still used on these. You still need to wash your organic apple before you eat it. And that's something that I preach about a lot, is wash your produce. Wash your produce. Because if for no other reason, think about all the people who may have handled that apple before you took it home. And you really want their hand germs. You wouldn't go up and lick a stranger's hand. Don't eat that apple without washing it, organic or not. But again, to the point of this article, seeing that the younger generations are supporting organic so much, it's a good boon for the organic industry.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, please, again, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying there's anything wrong about organics. I think organics are fantastic, but I just want people to understand what that really means, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about it.
Yeah, and some of the confusion that I've heard is with regard to antibiotics versus GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. GMOs are not organic. So in other words, organic fruits and vegetables and food is free from GMOs. GMO is simply going in and modifying the actual gene of something.
Right.
But it doesn't mean it's organic. And that is really hard and confusing. And probably if I didn't report on this and talk to people about this, I would even get that confused.
Because if something says non-GMO, that's not the same thing as saying that it's organic. And again, the whole thing with GMOs is there's GMOs and then there's things like crossbreeding. And same effect, different methods of getting there. Genetic modification, that happens in the laboratory on a very tiny level, and it can happen within one generation. You can see the changes that you want. Crossbreeding can take many years, many generations of plants. That happens out in the field. So that, again, a personal preference. There's been a lot of misinformation about GMOs out there and a lot of fake studies and a lot of studies that have had the information manipulated to present information to basically to trick consumers. And you know how I am about misinformation and disinformation, absolutely against that idea. Watch your labeling, right?
And I was just going to bring that up. So an actual legitimate certified or organic certified product, almost going to leave out the word organic certified product, actually has to have approval from USDA. So before they can put that certification on their label, they have to have it registered and approved by USDA so that you can maintain the integrity of organics and the integrity of the program. Unfortunately, like you said, there are some instances where the wording is misused or manipulated to trick consumers. But just so you folks know, there is an actual trademarked organic certification label from USDA. And it's not easy just to get organic certification, whether it's the farmer or, as you mentioned, some of the applications that are non-synthetic, the applications that are all natural that you are allowed to use. There is quite the vetting process before they can be approved and brought to the market.
Right. It is not easy to get that organic certification. Farmers have to go through a lot to get that certification. And that's one of the reasons why organics cost more, too, because they cost a lot more to produce because of the different systems. We're going to talk more about that. We do have to take a quick break here, but we'll continue talking about organics when we get back. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Get extraordinary disease control. Protect your almond season from leaf spot, powdery mildew, and more with the systemic broad-spectrum disease control and long-lasting residual of Axios 20SC fungicide, powered by Kenoprol Active. That's the only FRAC Group 52 active ingredient with no known cross-resistance to other fungicide groups for almonds. Choose Axios 20SC fungicide from UPL for an extraordinary almond season. Always read and follow label directions.
This segment is brought to you by Valent USA. We're talking today with Todd Bergdahl, Field Market Development Specialist with Valent USA. This segment is brought to you by Valent USA. We're talking today with Todd Bergdahl, Field Market Development Specialist with Valent USA. You can learn more about Chateau and other Valent products at valent.com.
In the vegetable industry right now, with any type of rain events, you need to take into consider disease control. That's probably the number one thing. Downy mildew with wet weather is problematic or can be problematic. Most of your leafy greens are prone to getting downy mildew. Having a preventative program in place that suits the crop is really advantageous, especially when you're coming up against wet weather. An ounce of prevention is definitely a pound of cure.
And who should growers talk to find what products they need for this?
Your local PCA, who distributor PCAs or the Valent rep, and then myself, you can always call me.
And you can always learn more on the Valent website. That's valent.com. Valent.com.
Today we're talking with aphids and whiteflies about Safina insecticide from BASF.
We just got nailed with it.
So tell us, how you feeling?
Really, really weird.
And you still want to devour this field?
No way, bro.
There you have it, folks. Safina insecticide is specifically engineered to disorient aphids and whiteflies, so they can't eat. And when they can't eat, they can't destroy.
Help protect your alfalfa from aphids with Safina insecticide. Always read and follow label directions.
Hey there, this is Dr. Eric Tedford, R&D Manager for Summit Agri USA, with some very exciting news for growers of grapes, almonds, and other high-value California crops. It's about Regev hybrid fungicide, which the CDPR just announced is approved for use in the Golden State. California growers now have a unique unique tool to battle a broad spectrum of fungal and bacterial plant pathogens such as powdery mildew on grapes, as well as alternaria, shot hole, and scab on almonds. Regev is the first hybrid fungicide that unites the disease-fighting power of botanical and conventional chemistries. This combination provides remarkable disease control via 9 powerful mechanisms of activity with only 1 MRL. This means that Regev delivers the disease protection trifecta of preventive, curative, and anti-spoiling control, all while reducing resistance risk. Regev is also distinguished by the broad number of crops it can be used on, so it's ideally suited for California agriculture. The full list of Regev's approved crops and diseases can be found on our website, summitagro-usa.com.
Regev Hybrid Fungicide is sold exclusively through Helena Agri Enterprises, Wilbur Ellis, and Tenco's member companies. Always read and follow label directions.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
We're talking about organics this morning, and we were talking just before the break a little bit about what goes into producing organics, and they do take a lot. The farmer has to consider a lot of different things when you go into organic production to get that USDA certification. And that's what, as a consumer, if you're wanting to buy organic, you should always look for the USDA certification, because that guarantees that what you expect as far as production and as far as the biological, like the chemicals that are used or the products that are used in producing that produce or are organic. Oh, I'm having a hard time with the vowel sounds today. So you want to look for that USDA label that says organic certified. That's your guarantee.
Then you have products. So there's your fruits and your vegetables. Those are pretty straightforward. Then you have like bread, and it looks like 93% of these consumers in a survey will buy baby food that's organically labeled. So you have these products that have more than one ingredient in them. And to our point about why it costs more and how hard it is, all those products that go into that baby food or to an organic loaf of bread, everything from the wheat, the eggs, all the things that make up that bread, they all have to be certified organic in order for that organic bread to be on the grocery store shelf with the organic label on it.
And there's a lot of different pieces in that puzzle. And so that is part of the reason why it costs more to give you that organic label, because again, those higher costs are always going to be passed on to the consumer. But like you said, every one of those ingredients in that organic product has to be certified organic as well.
Yes. And then you have the whole livestock organic thing. We won't have much time to get into that. But you have when we're talking eggs or organic beef, that's a whole nother level of what these producers have to go through. But I have an example of a farmer that I was interviewing who has some organic produce, but not a whole lot. And the reason for that is because the fields have to be managed completely different. The side, they have to have different blockages around them, like fencing, for example, because if a rabbit runs through your organic field and they poop or they bring something on their paws, all of a sudden you don't have an organic product anymore.
That's interesting. And is it not organic because rabbit droppings are organic?
You would think that, but you don't know what they've been munching on.
That's
maybe
right.
A neighboring field that is using a chemical or a popular chemical, maybe they're using a traditional synthetic popular chemical and that rabbit munched on the leaves of that field or something like that. Or maybe who knows? Something to that effect. We don't know what that rabbit has been exposed to, where they have been hopping around at, or what they've been eating. And that all that could be non-organic, and then they come into your field.
Yeah, gosh, can you imagine? It has got to be tough to be an organic producer. And I know that I've talked with several going through like the process to become certified and how hard that is. But just maintaining that, even after you get that certification, that was so hard. Maintaining it with all those little things that you have to watch constantly, that's got to be rough. I appreciate the work that they do.
Yeah, and costly for those producers. And so another example is if they want to use manure on their crops, on their vegetable crops or what have you, they have to source a organic manure supplier. Again, that kind of goes into the livestock side of things, but so they can't just go down to their local store or their local place where they could get bulk organic fertilizer and just load it up and bring it home. It has to actually be organic.
Yeah, and it has to be certified, and that has to, every piece again has to go through all of these different quality controls to make sure, before you can get your certification. So it's a complicated process, and it's a market that is improving, like this article was saying, with the younger generations really seeking out more organics and things. So I think we'll continue to see it grow more.
It sure sounds like it. This survey was really neat to actually read through the information that you sent to me. It was
Mhm.
really neat to actually read this. I knew that the younger folks were really into organic just based on my personal circles and my own kids and my own people that I talk to here on a regular basis. So I knew that was a thing, but I didn't realize how many younger generations are really wanting and desiring organic and just really looking for that clean and safe food source.
Yeah. We do have to take a quick break here, but we'll come back. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lori Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
We are talking about organics this morning, and this started out with a news release from the Organic Trade Association. The news release said that it's a $70 billion market now in organics, and that younger consumers, including new parents and their babies, are some of the biggest consumers for organics. A survey that was released by the Organic Trade Association finds that Millennials and Gen Zers are the most committed organic consumers of any generation. So it's the people that are starting their families, the young people starting families and things, who are really seeking out that organic label. Again, that shows, I think, okay, let's look at the generations, because that was another thing that I wanted to look at. Millennials are going to be our younger adults. I say younger because I am hitting 50, but I think they're like the 25 to 40-ish crowd now. And correct me if I'm wrong on that. It's hard for me to keep all these generations
Oh, that
intact.
is correct, actually. Yeah.
Okay. And then Gen Z is younger than that. So that's the next generation. And though they are like the teenagers and early 20-year-olds. So those are the groups. So we're talking about people from the ages of like 13 to 40 who are really supporting the organic market at this point, and again seeking out that organic label and wanting their food to have that organic label. And like you pointed out, we're not just talking about the produce, we're also talking about the food that they buy, the bread, the baby food was a big one, but then other processed products, they are looking for that organic label as well.
Yeah. And another point here that I find interesting is that when it comes to the younger generation versus maybe the older generations, is the younger generation, as we've mentioned here a couple times, they're looking for transparency. They're looking for clean, healthy food. They want to know what's going into their bodies. They want to know the story behind what they're eating. We see that even in farmers markets, why they're so popular, and the direct to consumer sales that a lot of the farmers are doing, especially in rural areas, because they know how their products were raised. And so it's a big deal for the younger generations. I like that this article you sent to me points out the older demographics worry more about what the cost is
Yeah.
than the actual food itself. And I would say that's probably actually pretty legitimate.
I would say that probably is too. And that was something I was just about to say too, is that the millennials, and this article says especially Gen Z, are ready to pay more for their organic products, regardless of how much money they make. So they're willing to spend more on their groceries if it has that organic label. So it's really been pressed into these younger consumers that the organic label is healthier, even though that's not always the case. In many cases, it's just not. And again, not putting down organics, I'm just trying to make sure we don't spread any misinformation. It has nothing to do with health. It has to do with production. But they see it as being a health issue.
I think a couple of reasons behind some of these perceptions is that it has been marketed as being healthier. It's been and I've seen these myself. It's been marketed as being higher in nutritional value with more with more minor, what the words here today, Sabrina, I don't know what my deal is. I get up way too early and there's a lot of big words out there today, but nutritional, like vitamins and minerals, that's what I'm looking for. That's how I've seen that promoted. And they'll say chemical free, pesticide free. So I think that these younger generations have grown up with that messaging. So to your point, it's instilled in their minds that this is healthier food. The older folks haven't had that messaging. And we also have to remember that the older folks, and I'm totally generalizing here, we become more aware of our limited incomes, sometimes on the fixed income, your finances change. And even though maybe your health isn't as great as when you were younger, I think there's a little bit of mentality out there. I'm old enough now, I'm just going to enjoy life, foods, whether they're healthy or not.
Plus, we have a lot of bills. We have a lot
Yes,
of bills.
bills change. That is true because according to another survey, and this is a little off topic, however, I think it proves my point, is that a lot of the younger kids, a lot of the younger generations either still live at home or they're moving home. So they do have a little bit more of that disposable income that maybe they could spend. I'm totally putting those dots together. I have not seen that as a statistic, but I have seen the two different statistics. And what we're seeing here is they're willing to pay more. They're willing to put out more of their disposable income on organics. But I also know that a lot of younger generations are living or moving at home. So it actually works together, in my opinion.
So then are they going to buy their parents that good, healthy, organic food?
Now, that's a whole nother issue, probably, is are they sharing? In my case, when my kid moved home for college, no, he did not share, but he did not buy overly healthy things either. So I'm fine with that.
See, that's fine. That's right. For my kids, neither of my kids are at home, and I'm thinking about what they buy. And for my son and his wife, I'm not sure. They do buy a lot of produce, but I don't know if they look for organic labels or not. And then my daughter and her guy, they're very experimental in their eating. And I love this. She'll try anything and they do a lot of cooking and stuff. But again, I don't know. I know they buy a lot of fresh stuff. They love going to the farmers markets. Both my kids do. And that's probably has to do with just how we grew up or where they grew up, and we went to farmers markets all the time. It's a beautiful thing to have farmers markets available to you. So I think they look for local. Both my kids are looking for like locally grown, but I don't know if they're looking for organic. I'm going to have to ask them. I would ask them now, but it's too early in the morning.
Right. And we've been around organic for a while, so it's not as much as a catchphrase as it used to be as far as, hey, what is this? I think the new one's coming out, and it's this again, it's just a tad bit off topic, but since we're talking about food and perceptions, we're starting to see a lot more about vegan eating. You and I even talked about that in the dietary guidelines. That is changing right there before us in the proposed guidelines. And then also the whole notion of regenerative agriculture, climate smart farming. I think we're going to start to see more of that coming into the labeling process and how consumers are reacting and seeing that a little bit later on. And then gluten-free is the big thing right now as well. Yeah. Gluten-free is a huge phrase that is being marketed out there.
Yeah. All right. That's a pet peeve of mine, and I'm gonna get right into that. Right after we come back from this break. We have to take a break. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Get extraordinary disease control. Protect your almond season from leaf spot, powdery mildew, and more with the systemic broad-spectrum disease control and long-lasting residual of Axios 20SC fungicide, powered by Kenoprol Active. That's the only FRAC Group 52 active ingredient with no known cross-resistance to other fungicide groups for almonds. Choose Axios 20SC fungicide from UPL for an extraordinary almond season. Always read and follow label directions.
This segment is brought to you by Valent USA. We're talking today with Todd Bergdahl, Field Market Development Specialist with Valent USA. This segment is brought to you by Valent USA. We're talking today with Todd Bergdahl, Field Market Development Specialist with Valent USA. You can learn more about Chateau and other Valent products at valent.com.
In the vegetable industry right now, with any type of rain events, you need to take into consider disease control. That's probably the number one thing. Downy mildew with wet weather is problematic or can be problematic. Most of your leafy greens are prone to getting downy mildew. Having a preventative program in place that suits the crop is really advantageous, especially when you're coming up against wet weather. An ounce of prevention is definitely a pound of cure.
And who should growers talk to find what products they need for this?
Your local PCA, who distributor PCAs or the Valent rep, and then myself, you can always call me.
And you can always learn more on the Valent website. That's valent.com. Valent.com.
Today, we're talking with aphids and whiteflies about Safina insecticide from BASF.
We just got nailed with it.
So tell us, how you feeling?
Really, really weird.
And you still want to devour this field?
No way, bro.
There you have it, folks. Safina insecticide is specifically engineered to disorient aphids and whiteflies, so they can't eat. And when they can't eat, they can't destroy.
Help protect your alfalfa from aphids with Safina insecticide. Always read and follow label directions.
Hey there, this is Dr. Eric Tedford, R&D Manager for Summit Agri USA, with some very exciting news for growers of grapes, almonds, and other high-value California crops. It's about Regev hybrid fungicide, which the CDPR just announced is approved for use in the Golden State. California growers now have a unique tool to battle a broad spectrum of fungal and bacterial plant pathogens such as powdery mildew on grapes, as well as alternaria, shot hole, and scab on almonds. Regev is the first hybrid fungicide that unites the disease-fighting power of botanical and conventional chemistries. This combination provides remarkable disease control via 9 powerful mechanisms of activity with only 1 MRL. This means that Regev delivers the disease protection trifecta of preventive, curative, and anti-spoiling control, all while reducing resistance risk. Regev is also distinguished by the broad number of crops it can be used on, so it's ideally suited for California agriculture. The full list of Regev's approved crops and diseases can be found on our website, summitagro-usa.com.
Regev hybrid fungicide is sold exclusively through Helena Agri Enterprises, Wilbur Ellis, and Tenco's member companies. Always read and follow label directions.
You're going to need me.
You're going to need us.
All of us.
You're going to need our help with your water, your air, your food.
You're going to need our determination, our compassion.
You're going to need the next generation of leaders to face the challenges the future will bring.
And we promise we'll be there when you need us.
Today, 4-H is growing the next generation of leaders. Support us at 4h.org.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
All right, before the break, Lorrie brought up gluten-free. And here's my take on gluten-free. And this is what I've tried to explain to people, because people think, we hear all the time, oh, gluten is so bad for you and whatever. It's an allergy. If you have a gluten allergy or a gluten sensitivity, yes, gluten is bad for you. Gluten is just a protein in wheat. If you don't have a sensitivity to it or an allergy to it, it's not bad for you. It's like saying, my friend Lorrie is allergic to strawberries, therefore strawberries must also be bad for me. Mm-hmm. That's the same thing as saying, oh, my friend Lorrie has celiac. That proves that that gluten is bad for everybody. Celiac, of course, is when you have an extreme gluten allergy. Our bodies naturally have always digested gluten. We've had wheat for as long as we've had humans, pretty much, or some type of grain. And some people have always been allergic to it. Some people have not. If you're not allergic to it, this protein in the wheat is not going to harm you. And that's just kill me, but that's science.
A question for you. I should know this, but I don't. So if you're buying gluten-free products, do you have gluten-free wheat, removing that protein that you mentioned? Is it GMO?
No, gluten and GMO they have nothing to do with each other. You can have non-GMO wheat, or you can have GMO wheat, but seeing something that is gluten-free has absolutely nothing to do with GMO. It's a completely different
process
marketing phrase. Yeah. And that's one of those misinformation things that just gets to me all the time, because we've created such a fear of gluten, and there's nothing to be afraid of if you're not allergic to it. Again, I go back to my strawberry analogy. Some people are so allergic to strawberries, it will kill them to eat one. I'm not. I can go eat my strawberries and it's not going to affect me. I have a slight gluten allergy. And so when I eat gluten bread, my stomach gets a little upset and I bloat a little. My uncle has full-blown celiac, and he can get very sick, and it does a lot of damage to his intestines if he eats gluten. So it's a completely different situation. And then my husband, he has no sensitivity to gluten. He can eat all the bread and pasta and whatever he wants and be completely fine. So it's just an allergy. It's just a sensitivity that some people have. And if you have it, you have to watch yourself. If you don't have it, gluten will have no bad effect on you. And I'm going to get hate mail for that.
Makes you wonder, because the gluten-free product aisle, it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and the labeling with the GF keeps getting bigger and bigger and more prominent. And all the ads that come out in your local flyers and online, all are starting to have some sort of gluten-free labeling on it. So it makes you wonder, is it more about Is there more people who have an allergy because we have more people on the planet and we just have more people that have the allergy? Or is it really about the marketing side of things and pushing, like we talked about the organic? And when
Yeah.
organic first came out, it was like this as well. So I wonder which is really pushing that market.
I think it is people who think gluten is bad for them because they saw it on social media. The gluten push really started several years ago, 10 years ago or so, through social media influencers who decided that wheat was bad. And maybe one of them had reactions to gluten because they had a gluten sensitivity, but they started spreading that gluten is bad for you. And people believed it because we want to believe our social media influencers. We think of them as our best friends. And we think of them as knowledgeable, even when many of them are not. So then of course, if you are a food company, you're going to grab onto that marketing opportunity because you have a product to sell. And good for them. They're doing good business, but we need to not be spreading misinformation and lying to consumers or misleading consumers into believing that a perfectly fine nothing of a substance is going to hurt them when it's not. And they're doing that just so they can sell very expensive products.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So that's, again, like I said, that's my pet peeve.
Exactly.
I can stand on my gluten-free soapbox all day.
It just goes to show too, as well, just in marketing and messaging. So yeah, we did have this big wave when organic first came out. Now we're having it in gluten-free. And I suspect, going back to what I said, regenerative ag and climate smart or carbon or some of those types of words will be the next. I predict that will be the
Yeah.
next big labeling craze.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you know what? And I think that is going to be very interesting to see, especially with the regenerative ag, because that has nothing to do with the food itself. Like it has nothing to do with what you're consuming, but it has to do with how the earth is treated while they're growing that
Yes.
food. And
Yes.
regenerative ag, very good for the earth. We're trying to get a lot of the US farmers are trying to convert to more regenerative ag practices because it's going to improve soil health. It's going to make so that we can grow food for so many people for many more years to come. So when you're buying food or products that are labeled through regenerative ag, what you're doing is supporting processes that are good for the earth. It's not necessarily having anything to do with your body. But again, I think we're going to start seeing more, like you just said, we're going to start seeing more support for that as well. And we're nearly out of
Yeah.
time, but it's an interesting conversation.
All right. It very much is. So we'll continue with our interesting conversations.
We will. That's right. We will. But coming up next, we do have this week's almond update. We'll be hearing from the almond board. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
It's time for this week's almond update, brought to you by the Almond Board of California. You can find them online at almonds.com. Joining us today is Taylor Hillman. He is the Senior Specialist of Industry Communications at the Almond Board of California. And today we're talking about elections for the Almond Board. All right, Taylor. So the election season is underway for the Almond Board. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with the elections.
Yeah, that's right, Sabrina. So the 2025-2026 election cycle for the Almond Board of California Board of Directors has officially begun. The cycle actually started February 7th, and it begins with the candidate declaration window. So that window is now open. And so this is the time where we call for any candidates that want to run for any of the positions. They have roughly 2 months, I'll go into that in a little bit, to put in their information and their intent to run for one of these positions and a chance to be on the board for the Almond Board of California and contribute to making the almond industry in California as prosperous as possible. So this year, there are several positions that are open for election. There are some one-year seats that always come up for election, but there are some three-year seats that are up for election this year too. So I'll go through those. The first being the independent grower number 1 seat. This is a one-year swing. This comes up for election every year. It's currently held by Paul Ewing, who's the voting member. And then also there is a coordinating alternate position with this seat as well. So that seat is up for election this year, both the voting seat and the alternate seat. Then there's also the independent grower number 2 seat, which is a 3-year term. This is coming up for election this year and is currently held by Brandon Ribeiro. And then also the coordinating alternate seat with this as well is up for election. So again, independent grower number 2, 3-year term, and the voting seat and alternate seat is up for election this year. And then on the handler side, the independent handler number 1 seat is open this year. This is a 3-year term, but it was vacated last year. So there's 1 year left on this term. So even though it's a 3-year term, there's just 1 year to this will come back up for election next year. But that is currently no incumbent. The person who was in that position has moved on. So that is an open voting seat. And then there is an alternate seat that there is an incumbent to that alternate seat. That won't be a 1-year term for this one, but the voting seat is open for this independent handler number 1 seat. And then finally, the 4th seat that's open is the independent handler number 3 seat. That's a 1-year swing, so it comes up for election every year. It's currently held by Darren Rigg, and that voting seat as well as the alternate seat are up for re-election this year. Then there's also a co-op handler number 1, but that's dealt inside of Blue Diamond. They vote someone and put them in, so we don't have anything to do with that. So it's just the 4 seats that I mentioned earlier, 2 grower seats and 2 handler seats.
All right. And you mentioned earlier also that there is a deadline coming up. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, that's right. These dates are clearly spelled out in how we need to go about this election process. Like I mentioned, February 7th was the beginning of the election cycle, and the candidate declaration window has opened. You will have until April 1st. That's the last day for ABC to receive letters of intent and the grower petitions. So when you do go through the form and file an intent to run for a position, there's also some other things that you have to do depending on the seat. You do have to go through a little bit of a quote unquote background check to see if you are in fact a grower or are in fact a handler. And then there are also some grower petitions that are required just for someone to vouch for you running for that position. So my recommendation is that if you are interested, look before April 1st, because there are a few other things that you have to do to get together to make it official.
This is the AgNet News Hour. We will continue with Taylor Hillman from the Almond Board of California right after this.
Get extraordinary disease control. Protect your almond season from leaf spot, powdery mildew, and more with the systemic broad-spectrum disease control and long-lasting residual of Axios 20SC fungicide, powered by Kenoprol Active. That's the only FRAC Group 52 active ingredient with no known cross-resistance to other fungicide groups for almonds. Choose Axios 20SC fungicide from UPL for an extraordinary almond season. Always read and follow label directions.
This segment is brought to you by Valent USA. We're talking today with Todd Bergdahl, Field Market Development Specialist with Valent USA. This segment is brought to you by Valent USA. We're talking today with Todd Bergdahl, Field Market Development Specialist with Valent USA. You can learn more about Chateau and other Valent products at valent.com.
In the vegetable industry right now, with any type of rain events, you need to take into consider disease control. That's probably the number 1 thing. Downy mildew with wet weather is problematic or can be problematic. Most of your leafy greens are prone to getting downy mildew. Having a preventative program in place that suits the crop is really advantageous, especially when you're coming up against wet weather. An ounce of prevention is definitely a pound of cure.
And who should growers talk to find what products they need for this?
Your local PCA, who distributor PCAs, or the Valent rep, and then myself. You can always call me.
And you can always learn more on the Valent website. That's valent.com. Valent.com.
Today we're talking with aphids and whiteflies about Safina insecticide from BASF.
We just got nailed with it.
So tell us, how you feeling?
Really, really weird.
And you still want to devour this field?
No way, bro.
There you have it, folks. Safina insecticide is specifically engineered to disorient aphids and whiteflies, so they can't eat. And when they can't eat, they can't destroy.
Help protect your alfalfa from aphids with Safina insecticide. Always read and follow label directions.
Hey there, this is Dr. Eric Tedford, R&D Manager for Summit Agri USA, with some very exciting news for growers of grapes, almonds, and other high-value California crops. It's about Regev hybrid fungicide, which the CDPR just announced is approved for use in the Golden State. California growers now have a unique tool to battle a broad spectrum of fungal and bacterial plant pathogens such as powdery mildew on grapes, as well as alternaria, shot hole, and scab on almonds. Regev is the first hybrid fungicide that unites the disease-fighting power of botanical and conventional chemistries. This combination provides remarkable disease control via 9 powerful mechanisms of activity with only 1 MRL. This means that Regev delivers the disease protection trifecta of preventive, curative, and anti-spoiling control, all while reducing resistance risk. Regev is also distinguished by the broad number of crops it can be used on, so it's ideally suited for California agriculture. The full list of Regev's approved crops and diseases can be found on our website, summitagro-usa.com.
Regev hybrid fungicide is sold exclusively through Helena Agri Enterprises, Wilbur Ellis, and Tenco's member companies. Always read and follow label directions.
You're going to need me.
You're going to need us.
All of us.
You're going to need our technical skills,
Our math, our engineering skills.
You're going to need our help with your water, your air, your food.
You're going to need our organizational skills, our problem-solving skills.
You're going to need our determination, our honesty, our compassion.
You're going to need the next generation of leaders to face the challenges the future will bring.
And we promise, we'll be there when you need us.
Today, 4-H is growing the next generation of leaders. Support us at 4h.org.
We continue now with Taylor Hillman. He is the Senior Specialist of Industry Communications at the Almond Board of California. And we've been talking about the election cycle that is currently underway for the Almond Board. All right, so you've given us a lot of information. So for our listeners who are hearing this and would like to either hear this again or read this again or get more information, is there someplace they can go online?
Yeah, about 2 years ago, we really looked at our website and decided that our elections page needs to have more information on it for anybody who may be even just slightly interested in this process. So we spent some significant time building out our elections page. That's at almonds.com/elections. And the nice thing about this page is it's pretty simple, but it has all that important stuff you need. It's got a table that shows the exact election dates, which again, the candidate declaration window that I've talked about, when ballots will be mailed out, which will happen April 21st, the last day for ABC to receive signed ballots, and when election voting ends, that's May 22nd. And then when election results are announced, which is June 2nd, which then the offices start on August 1st. So a nice timeline table to see what's going on and how the process works. There's also a policies section that will explain exactly what needs to happen when you want to put in an intent to run, including the deadlines and how long some things will take. Those seat options are open. Like I said, we're also updating those seat options for the people who have put their names in the hat. So you can go to the webpage and actually see who has filed an intent to run for the 2025-2026 election season. And then finally, at the end, which I think is the most beneficial part, is the frequently asked questions section, which we get every year. And we basically took these most common questions that we get, spelled out the answers, put lots of links and supporting documents in here to really help people be comfortable with how this process works and how they can get more involved in the Almond Board of California.
So does that page also go into, or maybe you can also go into a little bit more of what's expected of board members when you make this commitment to be on the Almond Board? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, that's right. This explains some of the frequently asked questions, explains like the term limits, what is required, all of the information you would need to even just think about being on the board is on this page. So that's a good add, Sabrina, in the fact that you can see what is actually going to be asked of you when you do put in your intent to run for the board.
So, what about for people who maybe are considering this in the future, aren't quite ready to be, involved in that way? Are there other ways to be involved?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, Sabrina. One of the best ways to start getting more involved in the Almond Board of California is to look at the committees. If you aren't quite ready for the board of directors, the committees are a great place to start. And the Almond Board of California has more than 150 active almond industry members that volunteer to these committees, subcommittees, and working groups. These are an important part of how we decide to operate as a federal marketing order. Getting involved in the California almond industry is a great way to ensure that almonds remain an essential crop in California and are demanded by consumers around the world. There are lots of different work groups and committees that you can get involved in depending on your interests. Just to name a few, there is a biomass work group, there's an environmental stewardship work group, there is the Global Communications Committee, the Global Market Development Committee. There's just a ton of work groups and committees that, depending on what you're passionate about, you can get on these committees and really contribute to how we operate our programs at ABC. And if you're not quite ready to jump on a committee, that's okay. All of our committee and work group meetings are open to the public, and you can jump on virtually. You can go to our calendar, which is almonds.com/events. And on there, you'll see some of the events coming up on the calendar, and it'll say for more information, email a staff member, and you can click on that to get the link to join some of these committees virtually. You can actually test it out. Just listen in, see what you think, and see if you want to get more involved. The committee formation will start here in June for the committees to begin in August. And we have a lot of rollover for committee members, but we're always looking for new people to get more involved. So that'll happen in June and then seated and announced in August. So you can find out more information at almonds.com/committees. Again, that's our committee page. It's got every committee on there with a brief mission statement on what they do, some more information, and then also the statement of interest form. We'll begin pushing those forms in June. So it's a great time to go check it out now, see if any of these groups may be right for you. And then when that happens in June, you can put your statement of interest form official entry as well. So again, almonds.com/committees. And if you just want to check one of those meetings out and join virtually, you can go to almonds.com/events.
That's our show for today. This has been the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. On behalf of Lorrie Boyer and myself, thank you for sharing your morning with us.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Also look for Sabrina Halvorson on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast by searching for AgNet West on your podcast app. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.